For our next panel here today, so please join me in giving a massive round of applause to a very talented man who's done a lot of roles from the likes of Sherlock, Fleabag, Dark Materials, 1917 and Prime. Please give it up for the brilliant Mr. Andrew Scott!
Hi everybody.
So firstly, welcome home, because I understand you're from just down the road here.
Yeah, this is my neck of the woods, yeah, Dublin man.
So what's it feel like coming to a stage in a room full of all these people that are in your neck of the woods and they're here to see you?
Yeah, great, yeah, it's really good. Hi everybody, a motley crew. Are most people here from Ireland or from... no, it's great, well, particularly because we've had a bit of... I don't know if you heard, there was a global pandemic.
Yes,
yeah. So it's nice to see everybody back. Yeah, these things are great because I don't do, social media and everything. So it's really nice to be able to meet people who like the stuff.
It's nice to no longer just be swiping and liking and actually seeing and talking, isn't it?
Exactly right.
And you described it. I've seen in interviews you described yourself as a shy child with a lisp.
Yeah.
How did you go from a shy child with a lisp to this world-renowned actor who's got incredible performances behind his belt? How did you go from that to that?
Well, I'm just a shy man now. I don't have a lisp anymore, but that's how I started in acting. I had quite a strong sibilant S. So I had to go and do these things called elocution lessons to make my impediment a little bit better. And I was really terrified of going, but there's something about it's like a lot of the people you see here today, when you put on a different costume or you pretend to be someone else, you come alive a little bit more. And so I became much less shy. I'm still a little bit shy, to be honest. So this kind of like being in the wings or things like that, I still get nervous. But something happens when you're on the stage. It feels like calming really for me. So yeah, it's an odd one.
And do you find that shyness that you still have kind of keeps you grounded as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great myth about actors actually that they're very extroverted. I think a lot of actors that I know anyway are actually quite shy, and so going into these kind of imaginative worlds is a kind of great relief for people. I always think there's a great similarity, walking around the cons like this, and you see people who just, there's something about comic books or TV shows or just these fantastical places that just ignite the imagination. So that's literally what I do as well. I just do it in a maybe a more formal way.
And you say you walk around cons and experiencing things like this. Can you remember what your first con was like for you? Because it must be kind of a really interesting experience, because when you're an actor, you're in a bubble, and you very rarely actually get to come outside of that bubble.
Yeah.
So then you come to an event like this, and all of a sudden, you're literally stepping into effectively a whole new world.
Yeah.
So what was your first experience like?
I'm trying to think of the first con that I went to. It is genuinely extraordinary because you don't really realize how much TV impacts people's lives, really, because it's a great connector. I think particularly during the pandemic, people were like, it was a real savior for people. I've been to a couple of cons since the pandemic has dissipated a bit, and you really just see how much of a lifeline it is. And I think for loads of people, it's a real social thing, because you meet your friends out of maybe a common interest in a TV show or an actor or whatever. But the first time I went to a con was at the height of Sherlock days, and that was insane. Yeah, it was really, really crazy. I couldn't get over it, actually. I still can't quite get over that.
Yeah, because Sherlock for you, because at the time there was a lot of hype around the series and who's going to play this iconic Moriarty character. There was a lot of speculation. So did you realise you were auditioning for that role, and then when you got it, what was that like to have to try and keep that a secret so that people didn't know?
Oh yeah, that was really, at the beginning it didn't really matter, but after I finished filming I was like, oh, I'm doing another TV show, it's an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. But really, really quickly the show it was like an instant ratings and commercial sort of zeitgeisty show from episode 1. People just adored it, and so there were all these articles about it. And so I didn't appear in it until the 3rd episode. So yeah, I was definitely terrified. I watched Sherlock along with everybody else. It was watched by something like 12 million people, and I hadn't seen it, so I was watching it with everybody else on the Sunday night that it came out. So that was a bit stupid. And then they had the whole reaction to the show, and yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, I really do think that there were huge amounts of opinions about Moriarty and who they thought it might be, and at the beginning it was my first taste of, you know, popular opinion, and a lot of people loved it, and a lot of people didn't want it to be me, they wanted it to be somebody else, and I was like, I called Mark Gate as the producer, and I was like, oh my god, this is a lot, and he was like, oh, I meant to say don't look at the forums, and don't look at anything like that, and I was like, okay, so I learned my lesson, you know, not to take what people say about you too personally, because otherwise you'd give up.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it must be challenging, and the part of the performance as well was, it was so spellbinding to watch, because he was very quietly menacing without being overtly menacing. How did you decide that that was the way you were going to play him?
I don't know, they wrote it very, they wrote it like he didn't really care about, he was sort of a little bit apathetic about all the destruction that he was creating. So I just loved the idea that he could be calm most of the time, and then sometimes people really irritated him, and he's explosive. I think that's the way scary people in real life are. They just suddenly go crazy for absolutely no reason. And
certainly from watching and researching and learning more about what you've been doing and the roles, you seem to inhabit the character very much for that time you're doing it. How difficult then do you find it once you've stop doing the role to kind of then move on to the next character without taking something away from that?
I don't find that too hard, to be honest. I find that I always say this about acting, is that we all contain multitudes within us, you know. So everybody here has a dark side and a light side, and so the acting is really for me just about playing with those different sides of yourselves within you. So I'm not a method actor or anything like that. I just feel like it's really important to if something is really well written, which Sherlock really was, you're just able to be as free as you want, and I was really happy to be playing that part because I hadn't been cast in something like that. I think a lot of the time for actors, you want to be cast in, you want to do things that you haven't really done before. Yeah. So I was very happy to be playing a villain, because I'd never had an opportunity to do that before. And so then it becomes the opposite problem. Then you just don't want to play just villains. So you want to keep it as, mix it up a bit, do a bit of theatre and a bit of everything.
Because then you're worried about having typecast, aren't you? That's the thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
And you sit there thinking, oh God, you think all the scripts come in for villains, and then did you find that after Sherlock? Did you get lots of villain scripts?
Yeah, you get sort of diluted versions of kind of the same character. So it's pretty easy. I always say for actors, if you're not concerned about, you know, you're not being too greedy or anything like that, I think you can just go, I don't want to do that anymore. And the biggest power you have as an actor is to say, no, I just don't want to do that. And that can sometimes be difficult if agents or, you know, they offer you, you know, a lot of money or whatever to play sort of the same thing. And my attitude towards it is, you're not here on earth long, so you might as well challenge yourself in whatever way you can. And theatre for me is something that it's just where you learn how to act, and you get a real sense of really being the chief storyteller. Because if an audience is bored, you can sort of tell immediately. So it's your job to just keep those muscles exercised.
And one of the things that certainly from talking to you, that it seems to me that as well storytelling is very important to you.
Yeah.
So do you ever turn down work then if you read something and you think, well, that's really not a good story, they haven't told that well? Or do you decide, okay, I'm going to take that role and actually try to change the story and put my spin on it?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think most things that come in, you have a sort of, it's not a dance, but like, the essence of something could be very, the actual story could be really interesting, but sometimes, a lot of the time with characters, I find is that they speak too much.
Yes.
Actually, sometimes it's better to retain your power a little bit and to keep it as fresh as possible. Bring your own. because no one actor will, no two actors will play the same part the same way. So I think it's really important to be as individual as possible, to make something unique. So that's kind of what I tend to do. And then there's kind of, I just spent the last year playing Tom Ripley, who's a very famous literary character. So it's very important to kind of bring your own vibe to that, not worry too much about previous iterations of characters. I've had it a lot before with, you know, Moriarty and on stage with Hamlet and Tom Ripley and kind of quite famous literary characters that people have a very strong idea about how they want it to be, and that can be kind of intimidating. So you've got to be like, I'm gonna do it this way and try your best, and if people don't like it, then that's sometimes quite a good sign, because if everybody is feeling, yeah, it's fine, I don't care, then it's not you. It's good to have kind of quite disparate opinions on what you do, I think.
And I think if you're confident in a role and you portray that confidence, then the audience is going to join you on that journey.
Exactly right. And you can feel it. You know, when you go to a play or like you're seeing a school play or something, and you think, when the audience is tense because they think, oh my God, this person isn't going to remember their lines, or they're terrified or whatever, you know, you can sense it. Whereas if somebody just is completely in control, then the audiences go, okay, they can completely relax. That's the name of the game, I think.
Very true. And we are now going to throw the questions open to you, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like to ask a question, please do put your hand up and I'll come around to you. I'm going to start with the first person who I saw his hand go up. So come over here.
Hi, you play John Perry on Historic Materials, and I was wondering if you would talk about filming that show with the Damons, who are, of course, sadly not real, how that worked for you and how the entire filming of the show was.
Sure, yeah. The question about Historic Materials, yeah, that was a really wonderful experience. I actually didn't have a lot of filming time on that, but what was sort of extraordinary about that was filming. They used to do a thing called a puppet pass, where you would film the scene, and a puppeteer, these incredibly brilliant puppeteers, would almost like Geppetto and Pinocchio would just be there, and you would do one pass at the take with no demon in the scene, and then you do another one with a puppet, and they would base the animation on it afterwards. But what was really extraordinary was that these puppeteers are so skillful, like what they can do. You really, even though they're made of wood and string, they were completely believable to have them in the scene with you. And I just think for adults and kids alike, we love all that kind of stuff. You know, it just ignites our imagination. And sometimes I think with CGI and too much post-production, I think can be less effective. Actually, I think sometimes literally seeing the strings, I think everybody knows that these things are made up. I think just having a little sense that this is a human-made art form, you know, could be a good thing. But it was really, really fun. I'm proud I had a really lovely time on that.
And we have a question here as well.
Hi. Something I think is really cool about your career is that in a lot of your high-profile roles, you've gotten to keep the Irish accent, whereas a lot of Irish actors in London don't have that luxury. I'm wondering, how does that come about? Is that your decision or a casting director's decision?
That's such an interesting question, because it's one that comes up every time. I remember once when I was playing Hamlet, which I did in an Irish accent, and I was doing a Q&A a little bit like this after the show, and somebody said, can you tell me the extraordinary decision why you would choose to do this in an Irish accent? And I remember thinking, well, it's set in Denmark, everybody else has had an English accent, but I'm not going to do a Danish accent because that would make everybody very embarrassed. So it's a sort of strange question about who gets to play what, and I sort of feel like sometimes acting is often described as pretending to be other people, which I think is true, but also I think it's about playing with as I was saying earlier, like the different aspects of yourself. And so sometimes I think acting is kind of the best thing you can do is not to act at all, and to sometimes. I just made a film with Paul Mescal, and it was interesting. We were talking a lot about you know, being an Irish actor abroad, and in that movie, you know, there was a lot to just talk about accents and what it means. And I suppose maybe being abroad, I live most of the time in London and sometimes here in Dublin. But the more and more I go into my career, the more I want to use my own accent. And I've never lost it. I think that's a psychological thing. I've been living away for nearly 20 years, but I've never, whereas other people go and live abroad and they come back and their accent changes immediately. So I do like doing accent work, but if I can, I prefer to use my own accent at this stage. Sure, listen, who doesn't love an Irish accent?
I got a question here as well.
Hi.
Hey.
I was listening to an interview you did about Spectre, when you did Spectre, and you said that you were a bit taken aback by the level of production, like a big production in a movie, and you felt like it affected your work back then. Do you still feel that way? Like when you do a big production, either a movie or a TV, do you still feel like a big budget or a big production affects you?
No, maybe not so much now. We were talking about Spectre. This is a James Bond film, which is obviously a very big production. I was very intimidated. I got to say, it was huge, and they'd spent so much money, and then you kind of come on set and you think, oh, it's my job not to mess this up, you know. And so I think I was intimidated a little bit, and I think I could have done more to, I don't know, just keep it's something I say an awful lot, but it's really important to remain childish and playful and all these things, and to just keep it like light, you know. It's acting is just playing. You should be doing that on every project you're on, no matter what the size of the budget is. And sometimes, if you've got a $200 million budget, it's really intimidating, and you forget actually, you kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit. Whereas if you're working on a small independent film, you're there. You're not waiting for the big difference on big movies and small movies is the waiting. That's really atmospherically, that's the big difference. When they set up these huge sequences, you're actually waiting in your trailer for hours and hours and hours while they set that stuff up. And that can't be good, you know, when you're waiting for something and you're nervous. So having time on your own actually doesn't promote an awful lot of a playful, hey, you know, comedic sort of feeling within you. So actually that's the thing. So by the time you're coming, you've spent an awful lot of time in your trailer, you know, thinking too much. Whereas sometimes on the lower budget things, you're just sort of, you're in the groove a lot of the time. So that's just like a sort of a baptism of fire. I think that was a little while ago, and I've worked on kind of bigger budget things now, and it's just important to remember that between action and cut, that's the time that you come alive, and that's the thing that the audience want to see. And so it doesn't really matter ultimately what's on in the background. Well, it does a little, but you know, not chiefly. You know, so hopefully I'm less intimidated now than I was.
We have a question in the front.
This is a historic materials question. I was wondering, if you had a demon of your own, what would it be?
Oh, a demon of my own. I don't know. Every time I think of a demon, I think of my dog. So, because he is like a little demon, actually. So it would probably be a little Boston Terrier.
I have a question from this person.
There's been an announcement there's going to be a Pride musical. Are you going to be involved in that?
There is going to be a Pride musical, yeah. I don't think I will be involved in that, no.
Hi Andrew, I've got a question about Ripley that you've done.
Yeah.
Obviously there's been a film in the past. I reckon that you would have had a look at that, and that you've played it in your own way, which is what you just said. On IMDb, we've got a date, but I don't think it's the one that you're in. Have you got a date for the release of that? For the
release of Ripley? No, there's no exact date, but it'll be this year. It'll be out this year. Yeah, it'll be definitely this year on Showtime. Yeah.
We have a question here in the middle.
Hi.
Hello. Hiya. So obviously I'm a big fan. I had first seen you in Sherlock at the wee age of 13 or 14, and It'll Pass still emotionally wrecks me. But my question was there ever a moment that you're like, oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is why I'm an actor, this is what makes that's what makes everything worth it, all the setbacks, all the trials and errors and all. So yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, there definitely have those moments. It's a tough job being an actor in the sense that you're kind of at the mercy of a lot of people a lot of the time. You can't really plan anything. You don't really know what you're going to be doing with your life. You can be, I don't know. I've been very lucky as an actor, but it can be tough because you miss out on a lot of stuff. You miss out on family occasions, and a lot of actors spend an awful lot, most of their time being unemployed, and you can't financially plan for stuff. It's difficult, and the older you get, it can be really tough. But having said that, that's why I keep kind of going back to the theatre, because there are moments in the theatre. There was a play, the last play I did was a play called Present Laughter, and it was at the Old Vic in London, and very, very, very funny Noel Coward play. And there's moments where you're with other actors on the stage and you're looking at each other, and you literally have to wait for the waves of laughter to stop before you can say your next line. And there's no feeling like it. It really genuinely is. You have to be able to. You're literally sort of playing with the audience, and you say something that's funny, and you have to be completely present, because the audience. I'm always fascinated by laughter in an audience, or silence in an audience in the theatre, because sometimes with laughter it is like a wave. People start to laugh, and then they can go on for 2 minutes, and it's your job to be able to interpret that and not to cut that off, or cut the rhythm of the wave, or not to wait around too much. And that's the stuff that I really love, because it's literally completely present-mindedness, because and that's the thing that makes all of us happy, I think, when we're just completely living in the moment. And when you get to do that with other people, and you're just there, and there's no feeling like it. So I'm looking forward to getting back to doing that. It was one of the awful things about the pandemic, because it really decimated the theatre for so many of my colleagues, people who don't. I was very lucky because I get to work in film and TV, and there was still a huge demand for film and TV, because everybody was looking for film and TV content. But for theatre, it was awful, and it's still, if I'm honest, suffering a bit. People's confidence in going to the theatre is just not there in the way that it was. So I would encourage anybody to go to the theatre if they can, because we need you. Thanks for the question.
And we have one final question here for this lady.
Hi. So coming from a school that's very LGBT friendly, we always use Handsome Devil to watch during the week, and everyone always loves it. But what I wanted to ask was, do you have any tips for someone who wants to be an actor when they graduate 6th year? Do you have any tips for where I could start when I graduate?
For becoming an actor? There's so many different ways in, there really are. The first thing I would say is, that's why I always think there isn't as much difference between what you see a lot of the people walking around here doing today and what I do. It's just I do it in a bit more of a formal way. I think the most important thing is to act as much as possible, and not wait to go, okay, well, I'm an actor. I'll be an actor when I get into a play, when I do a TV commercial, when I'm in a Marvel movie. When do you decide that you're going to be an actor? And I think you can decide that you're an actor at any time in your life. It's just up to you to sort of feel that you're one. Whether that's doing improvisational stuff or cosplay with your friends, or whether you wanted to go more formally with it. That's the first thing I would say. It's just some people feel that they're innately actors, and some people don't. And I'd say that's the first thing to say. But also, drama school is a thing that obviously is a formal way, and I never went to a drama school. I feel kind of glad that I didn't in some way, because I still feel very in touch with what I think acting really is, which is just play. But getting a monologue and learning how to learning the formality of learning how someone else might speak or how someone else might write, and just practicing that with yourself. If you Googled anything, monologues for young actors, amazing monologues are available on the internet. And just practice it yourself in the mirror and do that. And then if you feel confident enough, you could go and audition for one of those drama schools, or you could do it for some of your friends. But I just practice doing the acting and not waiting until someone else does it. You're an actor is what I would say, first of all.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a massive round of applause to
Thanks so
Mr.
much for
Andrew
coming.
Scott.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And Andrew will be at his table doing signings and photos with you for the remainder of the day. If you would like to ask him a question you didn't get to, please go and find him there.